Have you ever felt like your own home, the place you worked so hard for, suddenly became a battlefield? That's exactly what happened to me. It all started with something so small, something that should have been harmless, a simple porch renovation. But little did I know, that small porch would light a fire that would change my entire neighborhood forever. And the person holding the match? None other than the woman we all secretly called Karen. Karen was the type of person who acted like she owned the whole neighborhood. She wasn't just a member of the homeowners association. She was the HOA itself. Every little detail, from the color of mailboxes to the length of grass, had to pass her inspection. And if you dared to step outside her rulebook, she would pounce. Some neighbors tried to stay on her good side, while others, like me, believed in standing up for their rights. But at that time, I had no idea just how far she was willing to go. It started with me deciding to add a small porch extension. Nothing fancy, nothing loud. I wanted a place where my family could sit in the evenings, watch the sunset, and enjoy our time together. I even made sure the design matched the overall look of the neighborhood. I thought this should be fine. But the moment Karen saw it, her face twisted into that familiar scowl. I could almost hear the mental checklist forming in her mind. Within days, I received a letter from the HOA. Violation notice. My porch, they claimed, was not approved. According to Karen, I hadn't filed the right paperwork, and the porch did not meet the aesthetic standards of the community. To be honest, I laughed at first. It seemed ridiculous. A porch? An issue? But then the fines started coming. First $50, then $100, then $500. Each week, the amount grew like a snowball rolling downhill. And with every new letter, I realized Karen wasn't just being difficult. She was making it personal. What's worse, she started showing up at my house, standing on the sidewalk, taking pictures, and shaking her head like I had built a skyscraper instead of a porch. Neighbors began whispering about it. Some said, "Just take it down. It's not worth the fight." Others admitted they were glad someone was finally challenging her, because they were tired of living under her thumb too. I felt like I had two choices: bow down to Karen or stand my ground. And if you know me, you know I chose the second option. So I did my research. I went through the HOA's rules, line by line. And you know what I found? Nowhere did it say I couldn't build that porch. In fact, the only requirement was that it had to be in harmony with the neighborhood. My porch was clean, safe, and matched perfectly with other houses. But Karen wasn't satisfied with the rules. She wanted control. The next letter wasn't just a fine. It was a lawsuit. Karen had actually taken me to court. I remember holding that stack of papers, my hands shaking, thinking, is this really happening? Over porch. But to her, it wasn't just about the porch. It was about power. She wanted to make an example out of me, to scare everyone else into falling in line. The day I walked into that courtroom, I felt nervous but determined. I wasn't just fighting for myself. I was fighting for everyone in my neighborhood who had been bullied by her tactics. The room was tense. On one side, Karen sat with her sharp suit and a smug smile, as if she had already won. On the other side, it was just me and my lawyer, clutching evidence and hope. Karen's argument was simple. This porch violates HOA standards. But when the judge asked her to show exactly where in the bylaws it said that, she stumbled. She couldn't find it. She tried to argue about neighborhood harmony and visual order, but the judge wasn't impressed with her vague words. Meanwhile, my lawyer presented pictures of other homes with similar porches, documents proving my compliance, and even statements from supportive neighbors. The more Karen spoke, the more desperate she sounded. The judge could see it too. And then came the turning point. My lawyer revealed that Karen had been fining other neighbors unfairly, sometimes without board approval. We showed proof that she had been using HOA funds for her personal use. Fancy dinners, spa days, even a vacation. The courtroom gasped. Suddenly, it wasn't just about my porch. It was about exposing the truth of her leadership. The judge leaned forward, his expression stern. Not only has the plaintiff failed to prove her case, he said, but it appears there have been serious abuses of power within this HOA. Karen's face turned red. She opened her mouth to argue, but the judge silenced her. This court rules in favor of the defendant. My heart raced. I had won, but the judge wasn't finished. He continued. Given the evidence of mismanagement, this HOA will be placed under new leadership. My jaw dropped. New leadership? I didn't just win the case. I had just been handed the entire HOA. The same organization Karen had used to control. Everyone was now being transferred to me. The courtroom buzzed with shock. Karen sat frozen, her victory crumbling right in front of her. Walking out of that courthouse, I felt a strange mix of triumph and responsibility. I hadn't planned on leading an HOA, but now I had the chance to make it fair, transparent, and free from Karen's iron grip. Neighbors who once stayed silent came up to shake my hand. Finally, one said. Someone stood up to her. But this was only the beginning. Winning the case was one thing. Running the HOA was another. I knew Karen wouldn't give up easily. She wasn't the type to fade quietly into the background. If anything, this loss would only fuel her more. And deep down, I had the uneasy feeling that the real battle had just begun. So what happened next? How did Karen react when her crown was taken away? Did peace finally return to the neighborhood? Or did she find new ways to stir chaos? Stick around for Section 2, because the story only gets more intense from here. Backhand index pointing right. If you've ever dealt with someone who tried to control your life, you know how it feels to fight back. Don't miss the second part of this story. You'll want to hear how the queen of the HOA refused to go down without a fight. What happens when you take power away from someone who has lived off it for years? Do they accept it quietly and move on? Not if that person is Karen. If the courtroom had been the end of this battle, life would have been easy. But with Karen, nothing was ever easy. Losing the case didn't humble her. It ignited her. She wasn't just angry that she lost. She was furious that the very HOA she used to rule over was now in my hands. And trust me, she made sure everyone knew how she felt. The day after the verdict, I woke up to a neighborhood buzzing with drama. Some people were celebrating, congratulating me, even leaving cookies on my doorstep with little notes that said things like, "Thank you for standing up for us." Others were nervous, unsure if Karen was truly finished. And then there were the rumors that Karen was planning her revenge. And they weren't wrong. That morning, I stepped outside and found a letter taped to my porch. It wasn't official, it wasn't from the HOA, it was from Karen herself. In big, bold letters, it read, "Enjoy your throne while it lasts. This isn't over." My stomach dropped. She wasn't just bitter. She was threatening me. I crumpled the letter and threw it away, telling myself she was all bark and no bite. But deep down, I knew Karen wasn't the type to walk away quietly. Taking over the HOA was overwhelming. Suddenly, I had to deal with budgets, community rules, and angry residents who had years of built-up frustration. People came to me with complaints about parking, noisy neighbors, broken sidewalks. Things Karen had ignored while she was too busy controlling mailboxes and porch colors. It felt like I had inherited not just an HOA, but years of chaos that needed fixing. Still, I was determined to make things better. I called a neighborhood meeting, something Karen rarely did. That night, dozens of people showed up, curious and hopeful. I stood at the front of the room, nervous but determined, and I said, "This HOA isn't mine. It's ours. From now on, every decision will be transparent, and every voice will be heard." For the first time in years, the neighbors clapped, some even cheered. It felt like a fresh start. But not everyone was cheering. At the back of the room, arms crossed, lips pursed, sat Karen. She hadn't missed a beat. She showed up to watch, to glare, to remind me she wasn't gone. When the meeting ended, she walked past me without a word. But the look in her eyes said everything. This was war. From that day forward, Karen made it her mission to sabotage me. She started spreading lies around the neighborhood. She told people I was raising fees. Even though I had just lowered them, she whispered that I was planning to sell HOA land for profit. A ridiculous claim with no evidence. Every time I tried to build trust, she tried to tear it down. And she didn't stop there. One morning, I found spray-painted words across my fence. Traitor. Another day, I discovered my trash cans tipped over and my yard littered with garbage. I couldn't prove it was her, but who else would go that far? It was like living in a never-ending storm, where peace always felt one step away but never close enough to touch. Still, I didn't give up. I knew the best way to defeat Karen wasn't to fight her with anger. It was to prove her wrong by building something better. I pushed forward with changes. We fixed long-ignored repairs, created fair rules, and even organized community events. Families started coming together, kids played outside again, and slowly, people began to feel proud of the neighborhood. But Karen wasn't finished. She gathered a small group of loyal followers, the ones who either feared her or still believed her lies. Together, they tried to stage a petition to remove me. They went door to door, knocking on neighbors' doors, trying to convince them that I was ruining the neighborhood. Some people signed out of fear. Others slammed the door in her face. When I found out about it, I realized just how far she was willing to go. The breaking point came during one of our biggest community meetings. The room was full, the air heavy with tension. I had just presented a plan to improve the playground for kids, something everyone seemed excited about. But before I could finish, Karen stood up. Her voice rang out, sharp and bitter. This man is a fraud. He doesn't care about this neighborhood. He only cares about power, just like every corrupt leader before him. The room fell silent. Everyone stared at her, waiting to see what would happen next. My heart pounded, but I knew this was the moment. I took a deep breath and calmly replied, "If I only care about power, I wouldn't be here tonight. I wouldn't be lowering fees, fixing what's broken, or giving this community a voice. But let's make this fair. If anyone here believes Karen should be in charge again, raise your hand." The silence was deafening. Not a single hand went up. Karen's face flushed red. Her eyes darted around, desperate for someone to support her, but no one did. Then I said, "Now, if you believe this HOA belongs to all of us, not one person, raise your hand." Dozens of hands shot into the air. The room filled with energy, with hope. People clapped, cheered, even stood. Karen sat down, defeated, her power slipping through her fingers like sand. From that day forward, Karen's grip on the neighborhood was gone. She stopped showing up to meetings. Her followers drifted away, and slowly, she faded into the background. I won't say she disappeared completely. Someone like Karen never truly disappears. But her reign of fear was over. Looking back, I realized something important. The fight was never just about a porch. It was about control, freedom, and standing up for what's right. Karen tried to use fear and power to control people, but in the end, the truth and unity of the neighborhood were stronger than her. And here's the real lesson. Sometimes, the battles we don't choose end up being the ones that change everything. I didn't ask to lead an HOA. I didn't ask to fight Karen. But when the challenge came, I stood my ground. And by doing that, I didn't just protect my porch. I helped free an entire neighborhood from years of unfair rule. So, if you've ever felt powerless against someone trying to control your life, remember this. You have more strength than you realize. You don't have to fight with hate. You can fight with truth, with patience, and with unity. And when you do, you'll discover that even the biggest bullies can fall. Backhand index pointing right. If you enjoyed this story, make sure you stick around for more. Because life is a funny way of turning ordinary battles into extraordinary victories. And who knows, the next story might just remind you of your own.